85% with symptoms and only 10.5% treated is wild.
That gap is not a gap, that is a failure.
And women are just walking around being told it's stress?
Or being prescribed an antidepressant like that solves estrogen.
That is such a brutal medical shortcut.
It is brutal because the symptoms are everywhere, not just hot flashes.
Brain fog, sleep, mood, joints, sex, weight, all of it?
Exactly, and once you see it as whole body, the dismissal looks ridiculous.
The crazy part is they trained doctors for years and still missed it.
They barely trained them at all, which is even worse.
6 hours in a 4-year curriculum is basically a joke.
And then women arrive with a list of symptoms and get labeled difficult.
The whiny woman code is so ugly it almost sounds fake.
It is ugly, and it tells you how normalized the bias was.
Wait, so perimenopause can start in the mid-30s?
Yes, 7 to 10 years before menopause is very normal.
That means a 35-year-old can be in it and not know it.
And she gets told she's too young to have a real problem.
Nothing like being gaslit by biology and by the front desk.
That is exactly how it feels for a lot of women.
I kept thinking about how they described it as a moving target.
That's the best description because it is wildly chaotic.
So not a neat checklist, not a clean diagnosis, just chaos?
Pretty much, and doctors love neat checklists, which becomes the problem.
Pinning the tail on a moving donkey is an all-time line.
Because that's what it is when hormones keep shifting on you.
The eggs part was fascinating because women are born with the supply already set.
Right, and that supply drops over time until the system starts changing.
So the body is basically running on a finite reserve from birth.
Exactly, and that makes the decline very different from male reproduction.
Men are out here acting like their hardware is premium forever.
Meanwhile, women's biology is being asked to do more with less.
What hit me hardest was the mental health piece, not just the physical stuff.
The studies show worsening anxiety, depression, ADHD, even bipolar symptoms.
That changes the whole conversation around midlife behavior.
It also changes how families interpret conflict, because not everything is personality.
So the spouse thinks she changed, but maybe her hormones changed first.
And that misunderstanding can wreck relationships if nobody names it.
Or the internet just calls her dramatic and moves on.
Which is why validation matters so much for these women.
The weight gain part sounded especially maddening because they kept hearing eat less.
When the hormone shift is driving the change, that advice becomes insulting.
And she might actually be doing everything right already.
Exactly, same exercise, same diet, different biology.
The midsection fat shift sounded like such a real, visible betrayal.
It is, and it also connects to muscle loss and inflammation.
So strength training is not some fitness trend here, it's medicine.
It is one of the most important interventions for longevity.
That's a massive rebrand from tone up for summer.
Exactly, this is about function, bones, and independence.
The frozen shoulder part was random to me until they explained estrogen and inflammation.
It sounded random because we were never taught to connect those dots.
And women are just dealing with all this while being told it's aging.
Aging is part of it, but menopause is an independent risk factor too.
That cardiovascular piece felt huge because people still talk like menopause is cosmetic.
It is not cosmetic when risk for heart disease and diabetes rises.
And dementia is in that list too?
Yes, prevention matters, and timing matters with hormone therapy.
That window of opportunity idea is important because it's not one size fits all.
Right. Starting earlier can offer different benefits than starting much later.
So this isn't everyone gets the same pill, it's a timing conversation.
Exactly, and also a choice conversation which women often never get.
That part makes me mad because the absence of choice is the real issue.
And the weirdest part is many women are sent to 7 different specialists.
7 specialists for one hormone problem is so inefficient it hurts.
It is inefficient, expensive, and exhausting.
Do you think the stigma is mostly about menopause or about women aging generally?
It is both, because aging women lose the cultural script people prefer.
Society loves women young, quiet, and grateful, apparently.
And ideally invisible once they stop being convenient.
That is dark but also annoyingly accurate.
The good news is some women stop tolerating nonsense fast in midlife.
There was that divorce point which honestly made me laugh and wince.
Because it is both funny and serious when people finally set boundaries.
And it may not be the menopause itself causing divorce, but the truth showing up.
Exactly, the symptoms can strip away the ability to keep absorbing everything.
That actually feels kind of empowering if the support exists.
It can be empowering, but only if women are not left alone in it.
I like that she didn't make hormones the whole religion of the answer.
That's important because sleep, nutrition, exercise, and support all matter.
And the strength training message is going to land hard with a lot of women.
It should, because muscle is not vanity, it is protection.
I also keep thinking about the men listening and realizing this is their problem too.
Absolutely, partners, sons, brothers, and colleagues all need to understand it.
Men love claiming partnership until they have to learn one new thing.
This is a very good thing to learn, though, because it affects half the species.
Half the species is a pretty convincing argument, honestly.
And the more normal it becomes, the fewer women will suffer in silence.
That silence part is the saddest piece of all.
It really is, because silence delays care and steals years.
All right, next episode we should get into what real support actually looks like.
And how early women should start paying attention before the chaos starts.
Because if this is the moving donkey stage, people need a map.
Exactly, and we are definitely opening that map next time.
Episode 2 is where we get practical and probably annoy a few myths.
What blows my mind is how huge this is, and how casually it gets minimized.
Right. Like 1/3 of women are in it right now. That is not a niche issue.
And only a tiny fraction are getting actual treatment, which is just wild.
Wait, so most women are basically white-knuckling this alone?
That is exactly what it sounds like, and the fallout is way bigger than hot flashes.
Brain fog, mood changes, sex drive, weight, joints, sleep, all of it.
All of it, and that is why the whole conversation has been so overdue.
So menopause was never a single symptom. It was just the headline everyone chose.
Exactly, and the headline was lazily written by people who were not listening.
The weirdest part is the validation piece, because people think that is optional.
It is not optional when somebody thinks they are losing their mind.
And that happens because the body is changing across basically every system.
Estrogen receptors are everywhere, so when estrogen drops, the ripple is everywhere.
That sounds like a massive engine light, not a minor inconvenience.
That is the perfect analogy, because the dashboard is lighting up constantly.
And yet doctors are still acting like it's one hot flash and done?
A lot of them were trained that way, which is part of the problem.
I keep coming back to that because if medicine underlearned this, women paid for it.
They absolutely paid for it, and many still are.
The training gap sounds almost comical if it were not so damaging.
6 hours of menopause education in a 4-year curriculum is not exactly mastery.
6 hours is what people spend deciding where to eat dinner.
And then they are expected to guide women through a full life transition.
The worst part is the dismissiveness, like calling somebody a whiny woman.
That language is ugly, and it tells you everything about the culture around it.
And that was inside medical training, not some internet comment section.
Inside medical training, which is exactly why the bias gets reproduced.
So the problem is not just ignorance, it is inheritance.
Yes, and then that inheritance gets reinforced by bad history and bad messaging.
You mean the big hormone scare study?
The Women's Health Initiative really changed the entire field in a damaging way.
So one misunderstood study basically scared an entire generation of doctors.
And a generation of women, which is even worse.
Because after that, people stopped offering hormone therapy?
For many women, yes, even though the evidence has been re-examined since then.
That is such a brutal trade-off. Bad reporting creating real suffering.
And the women suffering were usually the least heard in the room.
I also keep thinking about the age piece, because people imagine menopause starts at 50.
It can absolutely start much earlier, even in the mid-30s for some women.
Mid-30s is crazy, that is still full-speed life for most people.
Exactly, and that is why so many women think they are just failing at life.
When really their hormones are shifting underneath them.
Right, and the shifts are messy, not neat.
I love that description, because everyone wants a checklist and menopause refuses.
It is basically the opposite of a neat checklist.
The chaos stage sounds almost like the cruelest part because it comes and goes.
That unpredictability makes people doubt themselves before anyone else does.
And then they show up saying something is off, and nobody believes them.
Yes, and that disbelief can drive depression, anxiety, and a lot of shame.
I did not realize cognition and mental health were so tied in here.
They are, and some women also see worsening ADHD symptoms, bipolar symptoms, or mood swings.
That is not a small side effect, that is life structure getting hit.
It can affect work, relationships, parenting, everything.
And then there is the body stuff, like muscle loss and joint pain.
Exactly, and that is why strength training keeps coming up over and over.
Because muscle is not just aesthetic here, it is survival.
Yes, muscle is longevity, mobility, independence, all of it.
So the old thin and small obsession was basically the wrong religion.
That is one way to say it, and I do not disagree.
I keep thinking how many women were told to eat less and move more, forever.
And that script misses inflammation, hormones, and the reality of midlife bodies.
The nutrition piece felt important because medicine barely teaches it.
Barely is generous, which is why so many doctors are flying blind.
Tulane culinary medicine is such a funny plot twist for a doctor.
A very useful plot twist, because it changed how she thought about inflammation.
And then she built a program that became the Galveston diet?
Yes, but the bigger point is she was trying to solve an actual patient problem.
That part matters, because this was not internet branding first.
No, it came from listening to women who were falling through the cracks.
And the cracks are huge, because women were going to multiple specialists.
9 specialists for 9 symptoms is absurd when the root issue is hormonal.
Classic medical choreography, one body split into 9 appointments.
And 9 copays, 9 waits, 9 separate guesses.
The lifespan part is the one that really lands for me, though.
It should, because this is about disease risk, not just comfort.
Cardiovascular disease, diabetes, dementia risk, all of that moves?
Yes, especially when menopause hits without support or early intervention.
So the window matters, like timing is not some minor detail.
Timing is huge, and prevention is where hormones seem to help most.
That idea of a window of opportunity is interesting, not just a yes or no.
Exactly, and that nuance gets lost when people turn it into a culture war.
Of course it gets turned into a culture war, because that is our hobby.
Sadly, yes, and women still end up paying for the noise.
What hit me, too, was the idea that behavior changes can get misread as personality.
Absolutely, and that can strain marriages, families, and workplaces.
That explains why so many women get mislabeled as difficult or unstable.
Or bipolar, or dramatic, or just not themselves.
When really they are trying to survive a body shift nobody named for them.
And if nobody names it, people reach for shame first.
Which is why talking openly matters more than people think.
Exactly, because language is how people get help sooner.
And honestly, the advocacy angle is powerful here. Tell your story out loud.
Tell it to your daughters, sons, friends, and partners, because silence is expensive.
Silence is expensive and apparently medically underfunded, too.
That is painfully accurate.
I also like the point that support is not just hormones or nothing.
Right, there is a whole toolkit. Sleep, exercise, strength, therapy, nutrition, hormones.
That feels more humane than the old all-or-nothing approach.
It is, because the goal is not perfection, it is function and relief.
And maybe a little dignity, which should not be controversial.
It should not be controversial at all.
Okay, and the stigma piece around aging women feels like the deeper enemy here.
It is, because menopause sits right on top of ageism and sexism.
So it is not just physiology, it is also social punishment.
Exactly, and that social punishment keeps women quiet.
Which loops us right back to the silence problem.
It does, and that is why this conversation has to stay loud.
Good, because next episode we need to get very specific and probably annoy everybody.
That sounds exactly right, and I am absolutely ready for it.
Because once you understand the chaos, you can finally talk about the fix.
And that is where we are going next.
Episode 2 is where we get practical and probably break a few myths.
And the crazy part is, women are still expected to just absorb it quietly.
That silence is basically part of the disease at this point.
Right, because if nobody names it, everybody blames the woman.
The classic medical move is to hand her a label and walk away.
And the label is usually insulting, vague, or both.
What hit me hard is how many systems this touches, not just heat and sleep.
Exactly. Brain fog, mood, joints, bones, sex, heart health, all of it.
It is wild that people still talk like menopause is one symptom.
Like your ovaries are just being dramatic for attention.
That's such a brutal way to say it, but yes, basically.
And the brutal truth is doctors were trained that way for years.
That training gap is the real scandal to me.
6 hours of menopause in a 4-year curriculum is not serious training.
6 hours is what you give someone before a coffee break.
Exactly, not before they start managing half the population.
And then they wonder why women bounce between 9 specialists.
Because each specialist sees one symptom and nobody sees the whole person.
That fragmentation is expensive too, in money and energy.
And in dignity, which people do not count enough.
The thing about the whiny woman code is honestly infuriating.
It is misogyny dressed up as medical slang.
Tiny little acronym, massive amount of disrespect.
And remember, those women were often right about their own bodies.
That part matters so much because they knew something changed.
They knew, and then they were told it was stress, aging, or nothing.
Nothing is such a lazy answer when someone is clearly suffering.
Especially when the suffering is predictable and common.
The average age piece also changes the whole conversation, right?
Absolutely, because perimenopause can start in the mid-30s.
Mid-30s is insane if nobody tells you to expect it.
That is why so many women think they are losing their minds.
Or getting depressed for no reason, which must feel terrifying.
And sometimes they are treated for the wrong thing entirely.
Like antidepressants instead of actually looking at hormones?
Yes, and to be fair, mental health treatment can still matter.
Right, but not as a replacement for understanding the root cause.
Exactly, it should be a toolkit, not a dodge.
What I keep coming back to is estrogen being everywhere in the body.
That is the key idea, because it is not just a reproductive hormone.
Right, every organ system is basically listening for it.
And when that signal drops, a lot more than periods changes.
Which explains why she was talking about bones, kidneys, even vertigo.
And frozen shoulder, which sounds random until you hear the biology.
Frozen shoulder sounds like something you blame on sleeping weird.
And then you find out it can take 2 years to resolve.
2 years is not a weird sleep, that is a life interruption.
Exactly, and women are often told it is just part of getting older.
Which is such a convenient way to not help them.
Convenient, yes, and also deeply costly.
The weight gain piece feels especially loaded, because everyone gets moralistic.
That is where medicine and culture become a very toxic team.
Calories in, calories out gets said like it is a personality.
And then the woman is treated like she failed a quiz.
When the actual issue may be muscle loss and hormone shifts.
Exactly, and muscle loss is not cosmetic, it is functional aging.
That strength training message is huge because it changes the whole frame.
It does, because strength becomes a longevity strategy.
And not the fake fitness version, the real one that protects you.
Real strength is about being able to live your life later.
That lands differently when you think about grandkids, travel, independence.
Or just getting out of bed without pain and confusion.
The mortality piece surprised me too, because it is not just comfort.
No, the risk profile changes, especially cardiovascular disease and diabetes.
So this is not a lifestyle footnote, it is a health inflection point.
Exactly, and that is why dismissing it is so dangerous.
The HRT conversation is where people get nervous, understandably.
Understandably, because the misinformation around it was huge.
The fear got bigger than the actual nuance, which happens all the time.
And the nuance matters because timing matters.
That early window is the part most people do not know.
Yes, perimenopause and the first 10 years are often the sweet spot.
Which means waiting until everything is on fire is already late.
Better prevention than rescue always.
I also think the family impact is underrated here.
Totally, because the woman is not suffering in a vacuum.
Her partner sees the mood shifts, the sleep loss, the withdrawal.
And if nobody understands the cause, they make up a story.
Which is how you end up with bipolar jokes, marriage fights, all of that.
Or with the woman quietly believing she is broken.
That is the part that feels the saddest to me.
It is, because the relief begins when people get language for it.
And once they have language, they also have permission to ask for help.
Which is why telling the story out loud is not small at all.
It is actually the first intervention before any prescription.
Right, because shame loves secrecy and struggles in daylight.
That was annoyingly good, and also exactly true.
I know, but the point is, if women talk, they can stop spiraling alone.
And if men listen, they stop making it harder by accident.
That part matters too, because support changes outcomes.
I think what I like most is that this is not hopeless at all.
Not at all, there is a lot we can do.
But only if we stop pretending it is a side note.
Exactly, it is a major health transition, and it deserves that respect.
Okay, we are definitely not done with this one.
Not even close, and I am glad we are getting specific next.
Episode 2 is where we stop circling it and start breaking it down.
And we are going to get very practical very fast.
The wild part is this is affecting a third of women right now.
And most of them are still being treated like it is just aging.
A third and only about 10% get treatment?
That gap is the story, and it is a bad one.
What hit me was the brain fog piece, because that is not a small complaint.
No, it can affect work, relationships, mood, memory, and confidence.
And people still act like hot flashes are the whole plot.
That is the tiny trailer, not the movie.
The thing I cannot stop thinking about is the training gap for doctors.
6 hours in a 4-year curriculum is basically a joke.
That is insane, and then they wonder why women feel dismissed.
Exactly, and dismissal becomes the default when the system is undertrained.
The whole WW thing was brutal, though, like what a lazy label.
It was cruel, and it told women their symptoms were the problem.
But the symptoms were actually pointing to a real hormonal shift.
Right, and estrogen receptors are basically everywhere in the body.
So that is why it is not just reproduction. It is muscle, bones, heart, all of it.
Exactly, and that is why the frozen shoulder, cholesterol, and mood changes matter.
Frozen shoulder sounds like a random injury until you hear how common it is.
And then suddenly it is not random, it is a pattern.
I also thought the timing was important because perimenopause can start in the 30s.
Yes, and that is why so many women are blindsided.
Imagine thinking you are too young for it, and your body is already in it.
That is why validation changes everything for people.
And then there is the scary part, the cardiovascular and diabetes risk.
Those are not cosmetic issues, those are lifespan issues.
So the real question is why this is still so taboo.
Aging shame is already heavy, and menopause stacks on top of it.
Society really looked at women and said, let us not make this easy.
Basically, and then women are left piecing it together alone.
What I respect is the practical angle, because this is not just talk.
Right, there is hormone therapy, nutrition, sleep, strength training, and support.
And strength training felt like the least glamorous but most important part.
It is the least glamorous and maybe the most protective.
That is such a bad deal for people who love cute workouts.
Cute workouts are lovely, but muscle is not optional.
So the takeaway is basically stop minimizing it and start naming it.
Yes, because naming it is the first step to getting help.
And honestly, that alone already feels like a huge shift.
It is, and in episode 2 we get into what actually helps.
Good, because this conversation just opened the door wide.
It did, and we are walking straight through it next time.